Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have made Nigerian meat pies for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you. To begin this with meat pies, we're going to start with the filling of the pie. So I'm just dicing up some yellow potatoes. So I'm just gonna give it a rough chop, and you can use whatever filling you like. Some people add carrots, but I didn't really add any carrots. You can add whatever you want to it. Making mine really simple, so I'm just going to use potatoes, onions, and of course meat. I'll be using beef. So this is beef meat pies. I believe they have it in the Caribbean, and they call them beef patties. So that's the beef I boiled with some seasoning. You can decide to roast it. You can decide to use pulled pork. As long as you dice it to manageable pieces that you can use it as filler, that's fine. I use mine in the food processor to just grind it down. You can buy ground beef from the store, but I don't like buying processed meat anymore, just because I want to be able to know what's in the meat, and I feel like this way it tastes way more natural. So saute some onions in there and some oil, vegetable oil. Again, you can use whatever filling you want. Traditionally we use potatoes, onions and carrots. Of course you can mix and match whatever you want. Let that saute for you want to make sure that the potatoes are completely cooked. So I'm just going to add some of the beef stock broth and cook it in so that it tastes good. You really don't have to use too much seasoning in this because, well, the meat has already been seasoned. I just added a little bit of garlic salt just to make sure everything tastes nice, and gonna cover it up so that it cooks until it's completely soft. So these are the potatoes, about a few minutes. They were still quite hard, so I added some water. When it got soft, I put in the ground beef, or should I say processed meat. Again, you can use whatever you want, whatever meat you want. So stir that in and just make sure everything is well mixed. And this is quite a process, so please take your time here. So this is what it looks like now. So I'm going to add some more onions in it. I love onions, so I wanted to have some chunky onions in the filling when I was putting it in the dough. That's why I added it to that. It tastes really good. So it's cooked now, but remember we're going to be baking this, and putting it in the pie and putting it in the oven is going to make it really dry. So this is cornstarch, put in water, and you add it to the meat so that it stays moist. So that's the reason for this process, so that when you're baking it, it doesn't get too dry and hard to eat. The cornstarch will keep the meat moist. You don't have to use cornstarch. Some people use cheese fillings. So when you put in the beef in the dough, you add some cheese to it so that it keeps it moist. But I prefer this method better, and this is what we do traditionally in Nigeria anyways. So that's done and ready. Going to move to making the dough. We're going to use flour. For this recipe I use 2.5 cups of flour, all-purpose flour, and I'm just going to sift that to make sure it doesn't have any lumps or bumps. And just sift as much as you need to. Add some baking powder. I add about a teaspoon. Sorry, I didn't really use any measuring tools here. When you cook, and as often as I do, you kind of get an idea of what's the quantities would be like, and that's just a little bit of sugar. You can completely skip that part, and just a tiny bit of salt. Just whisk it all in, and then you're going to work in room temperature butter. So I used about a stick and a half in there. So that's room temperature butter. You can tell just the way the knife glides into the butter. So just, work it in. I started off with a wooden spoon. You want to work it in, and this might take a bit of time, but don't worry, you get there. Yeah, just work it all in like that, and eventually you're going to get crumbs. Like when you work it in enough, you get crumbs from it. So I started using my hands. I didn't have any gloves, but my hands were clean. I always wash them. So you just work it in like that. So this whole process took about, up to an hour, to be honest. Of course, I was also trying to film, so it probably take you less time. But you really want to use your hand here, because the heat from your hand will melt the butter into the flour just like that. So that's the advantage of using your hands. Or if you have like a mixer with the different, those mixers that have stuff for making dough, you can use that as well. But I just use my hands. So now you're seeing it's getting kind of lumpy. I added a bit more flour because I feel like the butter was a bit much. I worked that in, and then I started adding a bit of milk so that we can turn that into a dough that we can mold. So just add water a bit at a time and mix. You can use your hand here, but I like to use the spoon first, and when I'm done working in the liquid, I'll go in with my hands. So just take your time here. It's quite a process, but it's all worth it in the end. It tastes really good. As you can see, the dough is starting to take form, and then I'm just going to add the leftover milk just like that. So you can see the dough is forming like that. It's quite wet, as you can see here, meaning that you need a bit more flour, but that's okay because I'm going to add in an egg. The egg is just going to make it flaky and buttery and soft, and makes everything just come. Eggs are binding agent, meaning that they pull all the ingredients together. So you can see the dough has formed, but it's still kind of soft for my taking. Well, you won't know that because you're not making it, but it was quite soft. But it's okay because after I work in this egg, I'm going to add a bit more flour to it. So there is no particular measurement of how much flour you're going to need for this recipe. It all depends on when you're mixing it with the liquid ingredient, how it's coming out, and you would just adjust based on what you have in the moment, if that makes any sense. So as you can see, I'm completely remaking the dough because I added the egg, and you can see the dough is not as formed as it was, so I'm adding in a bit more flour to that, and it's going to go back to how it was. And this egg will also make it easy for me to roll using the rolling pin. So that whole process makes everything, it makes the forming process of the pie easier. So that's why we're trying to do all the hard work now, so that when we're arranging everything or putting everything together, we won't have a dough that's too hard or too soft. We'll just have it perfect. So I went in again, I added just a little bit of flour. Again, we want the dough to be malleable and pliable, but we don't want it to be too strong or too soft. If it's too soft, it would break when you're rolling it. If it's too hard, when you bake it, it will be like rock solid. So you want it to be that medium. There's a medium you're looking for, which I feel like you would get with practice. So that's that. So that's the filling. You can see everything is nice and moist, and it's going to stay like that even after baking. That's our dough. I left it to rest for about 20 minutes. Add a bit more flour. This is the fun part. Just get the dough out. You see how that just glided off. Perfect. You just spread it like that. I could use my fingers to work it, but I wanted it to look pretty, so I used the rolling pin, which I did. And in the next clip I will show you a detail. I don't think I recorded it here. I'll show you the next pie I made, how I rolled everything out. So I use a bowl. If you have one of those equipments, or should I say tools that you can use to cut out dough, you can use that as well. So that's all I have, and then I'm going to add in some meat. Don't add too much because it becomes too hard to fold over, so you can just add that much. I added a bit too much, so I kind of stretched the dough out and it was a bit too thin. But as I made more, as you're making more, I feel like your patties or your pie will start to look better and better. So you can see what I mean by I stretched it out too much because there was too much meat. You can see it's kind of transparent. You can see the meat through it. So when you're done, just do that. Yeah, so use a fork. I use an egg right there to just seal it in, just like that. This process is so much fun. If you have kids, you can get them to do this for you. So yeah, so just take your time. Again, don't put too much meat in it, or if you do like a lot of meat, then make your dough a bit thicker, roll it out a little bit thicker. So this is what I usually do. So just take it out. So you see all the process we did earlier, the eggs and mixing it. You see how that just works out for us here. Look how everything just melts into one, and how it's easy to roll out. So just roll in all directions. Try to form a circle, not a perfect circle, but just try to make sure everything is flat in all directions, so that when you take your bowl to make the circular shape, it's uniform. You don't have edges that are thicker than the others. So that's that. So get the bowl, put on top, make sure you're able to form a circle, and then take it out. There you go. You kind of I didn't have enough flour, so I didn't want it to like stick, so I took it off, added some flour, and I put it back. That kind of deformed it, but it's okay. And then I added some more meat, a little bit less this time, and I used my hands here. I hope that is not too gross for you guys, but we're family. So I usually like to seal it in with my fingers first, and then get a fork and pin everything together. So you see that? See, this one looks way better than the first one we did. So we're going to do this process for the entire meat pies. I think this made about 10 meat pies, which I think is good considering we didn't use that much dough, we didn't make that much meat, we just made kind of enough. I think the meat pies we made was the number of meat pies is quite accurate for the ingredients we used. That's what I'm trying to say. Again, I overloaded this one, but I think I got better at folding it better. The dough is a bit thicker, so it did not stretch out or tear. So there you go. That's what you do for all of them. It looks easy, but if you've never done it before, it might be a bit challenging because of the process you did earlier, you know, making the meat, mixing the pies. So you might be tired here. So again, you know, take your time, and if you have someone that can help you do something, you know, let them help you. That way, you know, you have enough muscle strength to do this, because it does take a lot of work. That's it, guys. Magic, right? So I went ahead and filmed the rest off camera. Take the remaining eggs, just rub it all over your meat pies so it gives you that shiny glazy surface when you're done baking. This is my favorite part. Just do this all over, and you can see the ones that were overly stretched out. You can see the meat, but thankfully they did not burst open when we were done baking. Everything stayed sealed shut, which is what you want. Although there's nothing wrong with the meat spilling over, it actually tastes really nice when it does spill over. Take your fork and make some holes on the dough so that, you know, the vapor will escape when it's baking. You don't want anything, you know, popping open in your stove. So that's it, guys. This is going to bake for I think 350 degrees Fahrenheit, about 127 degrees Celsius, for about 25 minutes, and you're done. That's the meat pie. I forgot to film it being open, but it tastes really good. So I hope you guys recreate this recipe. Thank you. Bye bye.